Right now, in museums around the world, there are messages sitting behind glass that somebody wrote down deliberately, and no living person can read a single word of them. Today we're going over ancient writings we still can't decode. And I don't mean faded, or damaged, or hard to read. I mean fully intact, carefully carved, thousands of symbols deep, written by people who absolutely intended for someone to read them. And that someone was never us. Some of these belong to civilizations we know almost nothing else about. One of them was cracked by a bored teenager, and one is still sealed behind a wall that nobody is allowed to open. Let's start with the big one. 4,500 years ago, the Indus Valley civilization covered more than 1 million square kilometers, larger in area than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia put together. Cities on perfect grids, standardized bricks, covered sewers, public baths, weights so precise that you can find matching stone cubes hundreds of kilometers apart. These people were organized on a level that's genuinely hard to overstate, and they wrote. We have somewhere north of 4,000 inscribed objects, seals, tablets, pottery, tiny carved squares with a unicorn-like animal and a line of symbols above it. Around 400 distinct signs. And nobody can read any of it. Here's why this one is so brutally hard. When Egyptian hieroglyphs were cracked, it was because of the Rosetta Stone, the same text written in a script we could read. That's the key that opens everything. For the Indus Script, there is no Rosetta Stone. No bilingual text has ever been found. And the inscriptions themselves are tiny. The average one is about 5 symbols long. The longest known is around 26. You cannot brute force a language out of 5 symbol fragments. There's not enough structure to work with. So the arguments have gone in circles for a century. Is it a full language? Is it a system of tags and ownership marks that never encoded speech at all? Statistical studies have found patterns consistent with real linguistic structure, which suggests it's a genuine writing system. Others push back hard, and the stakes here are enormous. This is one of the 3 great early civilizations, and it's the only one that is still silent. We can read Egypt, we can read Mesopotamia, their kings, their contracts, their complaints about bad copper. From the Indus, we have nothing. No name of a ruler, no god, no city as they called it. 1 million square kilometers of people, and we don't know what they called themselves. Now go to Crete, around 1800 BC. The Minoans, palaces, bull-leaping frescoes, the culture that gave us the Minotaur legend. They left behind 2 scripts, and this is what makes this entry so maddening. The second one, Linear B, was cracked in 1952 by an architect named Michael Ventris, who'd been obsessed with the puzzle since he was 14 years old. He proved it was an early form of Greek, and it changed our understanding of the Bronze Age overnight. The tablets turned out to be, mostly, inventories, accounting, sheep counts, and wheel repairs. Linear B is the younger script. It was adapted from the older one, Linear A. They share many of the same signs, which means we can look at a Linear A tablet and pronounce it. We can sound out the syllables using the Linear B values, and it means nothing. The words that come out don't match any language we know. Think about how strange that is. It's like being handed a page you can read aloud perfectly, fluently, and understanding none of it. The Minoans weren't speaking Greek. They were speaking something else, some language that has no surviving relatives, that left no other trace, and that died with them. We have their sounds. We lost their meaning. Easter Island, the most remote inhabited place on Earth, over 3,000 kilometers from the nearest continent. The people there, the Rapa Nui, carved the famous stone heads. They also, at some point, developed a script, Rongorongo, rows of tiny, precise glyphs, birds, fish, human figures, geometric shapes, carved into wooden tablets. And the carving has a quirk that tells you these people were serious. It's written in reverse boustrophedon, which means you read one line left to right. Then you physically rotate the tablet 180 degrees and read the next line. Every alternate line is upside down. That is not a doodle. That's a system. Here's the tragedy. In the 1800s, Easter Island was devastated. Slave raids took a huge portion of the population, including the elite, and disease killed most of the rest. The people who could read Rongorongo were the ones taken and the ones who died. Missionaries then encouraged the burning of the tablets as pagan objects. Out of what may have been hundreds of texts, around 24 survive worldwide. And that's the whole problem. 24 tablets is not enough material to decode a script, no matter how clever you are. There's a floor, a minimum amount of text you need, and we're under it. There's also a genuinely unsettled question of whether Rongorongo was even developed independently or invented after the Rapa Nui saw Spanish writing in 1770. Either way, a script was born on the most isolated island on the planet, and it was extinguished within a couple of generations, not lost slowly to time, destroyed in living memory, while people who could read it were still alive. 1908, Crete. An Italian archaeologist digs up a disc of fired clay about 16 centimeters across. Both sides are covered in symbols arranged in a spiral running inward. 241 symbol impressions, 45 distinct signs, a mohawked head, a walking man, a fish, a shield, a flower, a bird. And here's what makes it extraordinary. The symbols weren't carved, they were stamped. Somebody made a set of 45 individual punches and pressed them into wet clay. That is movable type. Around 1700 BC, roughly 3,000 years before Gutenberg. But nobody makes a set of 45 reusable stamps to produce one object. You make stamps because you intend to mass produce. So where's everything else? That's the core of the mystery. The Phaistos Disc is the only one. In over a century of excavation across Crete, no second disc, no other stamped text, and no other artifact bearing that script has ever been confirmed, which produces a horrible catch-22. You can't decode a script from a single object. There's nothing to cross-reference. And because it's unique, some scholars have argued for decades that it might be a forgery, though most now consider it authentic. So we have a printed page, 3 millennia before printing, from a print run of exactly one. Around 3100 BC, in what's now southwestern Iran, one of the earliest writing systems on Earth appears. Proto-Elamite. We have well over 1,000 tablets. That's a decent corpus, far more than Rongorongo, far more than the disc, and they've been studied for over 100 years. Still unreadable. And the reason is almost funny, in a bleak way. Researchers who work on these tablets have pointed out something the earlier scripts share. The scribes were bad at their jobs. This is the very beginning of writing. There was no long tradition, no standardization, no schooling system yet. Different scribes used the same sign differently. Many tablets contain outright errors, sums that don't add up, signs that appear nowhere else. You cannot decode a script when the source material itself is inconsistent, because you can't tell a rule from a mistake. What we do know is the shape of it. Like most early writing, this isn't poetry, it's administration. Quantities, commodities, workers, rations. Somebody counting somebody else's grain. There's something bleakly perfect about that. The first thing humans invented writing for, again and again, all over the world, was not to record a story or a prayer. It was to keep track of who owed what. If unsolved things bother you in a way you can't explain, same. Subscribe and I'll keep bringing them up out of the archive. Now for the supporting cast. Early 1400s. 240 pages in an unknown script, filled with plants that match no known species, astronomical charts, and drawings of women bathing in interconnected green pools. Every serious codebreaker has taken a run at it. World War II cryptographers, the NSA, and now machine learning models built specifically to attack it. All of them have failed. What the statistics keep showing is that the text behaves like a real language. Consistent word lengths, natural-looking frequency patterns, structure that's very hard to fake by hand in the 15th century. Which leaves the worst possible answer. It's probably meaningful, and it's still unreadable. A large sandstone slab once stood at the mouth of the Singapore River, covered in an inscription, possibly 1,000 years old. In 1843, Colonial engineers, widening the passage, decided it was in the way and blew it up. A few fragments were saved, almost by accident, by an officer who thought they might matter. Everything else is gravel. The script has never been identified, and it never will be. There isn't enough left. Someone's message survived 1,000 years and was destroyed by a road-widening project. On Bronze Age Cyprus, a script derived from Linear A was used for around 700 years, and it's undeciphered. But there's an extra twist here. Scholars can't even agree on how many scripts they're looking at. The surviving material has been split into multiple subgroups that may be different writing systems, or maybe the same system written by different hands. Before you can decode it, you have to answer a question no one can answer. Is this one language or several? A book of around 450 pages that surfaced in Hungary in the 1800s, written in a script with a wildly unusual number of distinct symbols, far more than any normal alphabet. Its illustrations mix Christian, pagan, and Islamic imagery in the same volume, which fits no known tradition. It's been called a hoax for 2 centuries. But recent statistical work suggests the text follows consistent internal rules, which is exactly what a real writing system does, and exactly what a forger inventing scribbles usually fails to produce. And to close, the one that isn't undeciphered, because it hasn't been opened. In 1974, Chinese farmers digging a well found the terracotta army, thousands of life-sized soldiers, each with a different face. But that's the outer perimeter. The tomb mound of the first emperor itself, at the center, has never been excavated. Ancient records describe a sealed underground palace containing a map of his empire with rivers of flowing mercury. And soil surveys have detected genuinely abnormal mercury concentrations in the mound, which is unsettling corroboration. The Chinese government has deliberately left it sealed, and the reasoning is sound. When the terracotta warriors were unearthed, they were brightly painted, and within minutes of hitting the air, the paint curled and flaked away. We watched the color vanish in real time. So the tomb stays closed. Not because we can't open it, but because we're not good enough yet to open it without destroying what's inside. So there you have it. 10 writings we can't read. A civilization of 1 million square kilometers that left 4,000 inscriptions and no name. A script we can pronounce perfectly and not understand at all. A printed disc 3,000 years before printing from a print run of 1. And an emperor's library sealed under a hill, waiting for us to get better at our jobs. And here's what actually gets me about all of this. Every one of these was somebody deliberately reaching forward. Writing is the only technology humans ever invented specifically to talk to people who don't exist yet. Everything else, the wheel, the plow, the sword, served the person holding it. Writing serves the person who comes after. Somebody sat down with a chisel or a reed or a set of 45 little stamps and thought, this needs to outlast me. And it did. That's the part people miss. These aren't failures. Every single one of these succeeded. The message survived thousands of years. Wars, floods, empires, and made it all the way to us. We're just the generation that can't read it yet. Linear B sat unread for 3,000 years until a teenager got obsessed with it and eventually cracked it. The Herculaneum scrolls were unreadable for 250 years until someone worked out how to see the ink inside without unrolling them. So none of these are closed, they're just open. Somebody is going to read the Indus Script. It might be a professor with 40 years in the field. It might be a bored 14-year-old who sees the pattern nobody else did. It might be you. Until the next thing the ground gives back.